This is Captain Lyman from Camden, Maine. And if you've been thinking about taking your boat south to the Caribbean for the winter, or crewing on someone else's boat that's heading in that direction, this short video is an introduction to what an offshore voyage is like. Now, hundreds of yachts make this 1,500-mile voyage each fall, out into the Atlantic, crossing over the Gulf Stream, sailing through the Bermuda Triangle to the winter cruising grounds in the Caribbean. It'll take a little more than 2 weeks to make this voyage, and there'll be some delightful trade wind sailing along the way, as well as some challenging conditions to deal with. I've made this round-trip voyage from Maine to the Caribbean more than a dozen times, and the video in this program came from those voyages. The crews of these yachts are going along for the experience, and they include family and friends, but also members of OPO, Offshore Passage Opportunities, which is a crew networking organization that puts crews together with captains and owners that are taking boats south and looking for people to join them. Most of these yachts will join a rally. There are 3 of them that leave the east coast of the United States for the Caribbean. The one we're going to talk about first is the North American rally to the Caribbean, the NARC. It leaves Newport, Rhode Island in the fall. Here, Newport, the rum line is 640 miles down to Bermuda, crossing the Gulf Stream in here. Then a few days in Bermuda of reprovisioning, sightseeing, resting up, and fixing gear. And then they leave with a good weather window on the 800 to 900 mile voyage down to the Caribbean, which is out of the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin or Antigua. But we like to make a little easting out here at about 63 degrees west, so that when we get into the trade winds here around 22, 23 degrees north, the winds will be blowing 15 to 25 knots, and we want to have those on our stern or on our port quarter as we go into the islands. There are 2 rallies that depart the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay and make a direct sail to the British Virgin Islands without any planned stops. The Caribbean 1500 departs from Portsmouth, Virginia, and the Salty Dog Rally departs from Hampton Roads, Virginia, both near Norfolk. Both usually pick the first weekend in November to depart. A British company called World Cruising Club bought the Caribbean 1500 a few years ago from founder Steve Black and added it to their stable of rallies that charge a fee for joining. The Salty Dog Rally started off as a renegade rally, departing from about the same place and time as the 1500. It has grown to far surpass the Caribbean 1500 in numbers because it's free, and also because of the efforts of Blue Water Sailing Magazine in helping with seminars, a weather router, and some organization. For those that live aboard, or are full-time cruisers, being in the Chesapeake Bay, and perhaps attending the Annapolis Boat Show in October, it's far better being there than in cold New England. So it makes sense from departing further south in the NARC Rally. The Salty Dog Rally attracts many repeat snowbirds that make the sail back and forth every year. The 1500 runs a tighter ship with a full onboard safety inspection and a list of required offshore gear. The Caribbean 1500 might be a good fit for those venturing offshore for the first time and want a little more guidance and hand-holding. They do charge a fee, which covers the expenses of their team of yellow shirts, who are on hand to help with most any problem. The NARC Rally was started in the year 2000 when Hank Schmidt of Offshore Passage Opportunities was moving a fleet of Swan charter boats from the Newport, Rhode Island area to the French side of St. Martin, and he invited other boats to join them. The rally is free because it helps create more opportunities for Offshore Passage Opportunity members. A forecast for the route is provided by Weather Routing Incorporated, and there are discounts and socials, but there's no safety inspection. Since the rally starts 200 miles further east and is divided into 2 legs, some people would argue that this is a better opportunity, especially if you're departing from New England or the New York area. To give you an idea of what it's like on one of these voyages in the NARC Rally from Newport to Bermuda to the Caribbean, I put together this short video. A dozen or more yachts gathered at the Newport Yachting Center in late October to provision and prepare the boats and the crews for the offshore trip. There's a skipper's meeting at the Seamen's Institute in Newport just prior to departure. Hank Schmidt, who organizes the NARC Rally and also is the president of Offshore Passage Opportunities, gets together with meteorologists from Weather Router Incorporated, which is the weather service that we use for the NARC. They provide a package of detailed information on the weather we can expect, the wind and seas, the Gulf Stream crossing, what we can expect as we near Bermuda.
NARC Radio Net, this is the yacht Tashtega, a lucky lady.
Each of the rallies, including the NARC Rally, have their own radio net. This keeps yachts in daily touch with each other, sharing positions, information on weather and local conditions, in addition to the social interaction that all sailors enjoy. Boats and even individual crew members may take along a personal tracker. These small electronic devices send up the yacht's lat-long position to a satellite every few minutes, which then sends down the position to a web page for the folks at home to keep track of your progress across the open ocean. There are two I'm familiar with. There's the Spot and the InReach. The Spot provides just a position, where the InReach, developed by DeLorme but recently acquired by Garmin, not only uplinks your position, it can also be used as a messaging device to send short text messages home or to request assistance. The Gulf Stream crossing is always something every yacht skipper has to contend with. We're going to spend a little bit of time discussing that because it is a major part of the voyage. This fast-flowing body of water, which comes up out of the Florida Straits here and goes out into the Atlantic, is not just a single body of water. It meanders around, it spins off eddies, creates counterflows, and finding out where it's going to be when you cross it is imperative to make sure that you can get it on the right side. If you get into the wrong side of the current, it's going to take about 2 or 3 knots off your boat speed. Hit it on the right side, and it'll add that amount to your voyage. Let's look at that chart and see what it says. This is the chart of the Gulf Stream as it intersects our course from Newport to Bermuda. Weather Routing Incorporated, the weather routing service we used, provided this to us just before we left Newport. Let me show you this in detail. Newport is here, Bermuda is down here. The rum line is this line here. What we wanted to do is make the best use of the Gulf Stream and not have it be a bother. So, we had planned to come down across the Gulf Stream at its narrowest point here, but the weather router said, well, why don't you make use of this section in here, which is a positive flow. So the route we took was on the rum line. We came right down across, picked up the Gulf Stream right here, and had 1.5 knots to 2 knots pushing us all the way over to here. As we came down across this one, picked up this eddy here, and went into Bermuda there. When we left Newport in early November on the NARC rally, the wind was blowing northwest 25 to 35 knots. The seas were building to 9 feet as we left the lee of land and headed out into the Atlantic to our first waypoint on the Gulf Stream. Now, since we were sailing southeast, the wind and the seas were off our starboard quarter, pushing us along at near hull speed. It was a wet and cold night on deck. Now that next morning, the seas had diminished, the wind had dropped to 15 to 25 knots. We were sailing along under full sail, making good speed, heading to the Gulf Stream. Now crossing the Gulf Stream was a joy this time because we found a nice little meander that added 3 knots to our speed over the bottom. So instead of sailing along at 6, we were sailing along at 8 knots. It took us about a half a day to get through the Gulf Stream, and on the other side, the wind went into the southwest. We sailed for a while, and the wind dropped, and we motored for a day. About 150 miles north of Bermuda, a front was approaching. We heard about it from weather routers on the sat phone and passed the word to the rest of the fleet about what was going to happen.
This is the NARC Radio Net, this is the yacht Tashtego. Lucky Lady, are you on tonight?
Tashtego, this is Lucky Lady, over.
Good evening, Francis, and where do we find ourselves tonight?
We find ourselves at 35436619. Joycey is much better. We decided to really try for Bermuda, and at 4 o'clock we began motoring southwest to get as far over as possible for the upcoming wind, which appeared in the grid files I downloaded today. Over.
I copy that. We are at 35 degrees 20 minutes, 66 degrees 40 minutes. We're slightly ahead of you. We're heading due south right now to a waypoint to the northwest of Bermuda in anticipation of this wind stuff that's happening. Now, if anyone's out there listening besides Lucky Lady, I just got off the horn with Weather Trackers Incorporated, and this is the report they gave me.
What's that crazy wind meter say?
We could see the clouds gathering behind us on the afternoon of Friday, so we shortened sail. We put a full reef in the main, prevented it off to the port side so it wouldn't jibe. We ran with just the full reef main and the staysail, steering just 10 degrees off downwind. It was tricky because the seas were building behind us, with the wind behind us. We didn't want to jibe, we didn't want to broach. So the crews had their handfuls, steering the yacht and keeping it directly on course. The wind blew up to 40 to 50 knots, but this only lasted a few hours. As the front passed over us, we were left wallowing in confused seas. We jibed over, raised full sails, and headed to Bermuda. A.J. Smith, one of the skippers on another boat in the NARC, shares his crew's encounter with the frontal passage as they were nearing Bermuda.
Coming in here, we called Bermuda Radio about 5 a.m. on Friday. We were trying to get in before a gale that was forecast, and it hit us right after that. So we had some big seas right off of Kitchen Shoal. We were about 10 miles out, and it took us maybe 6 hours to get to the cut.
The wind shifted out of the southwest. We raised sail and headed for Bermuda. As we neared St. George's Harbor, we dropped the sails, prepared the boat, and motored through Town Cut into the harbor, onto the island of Bermuda, 5 days out of Newport. Bermuda is not only a welcome stop after a challenging voyage, it's a world-class yachting destination all by itself. It was the site of the 2017 America's Cup, which Offshore Passage Opportunities was a part of, hosting the Rally to the Cup, which brought boats, owners, and crews to the island for the races. Bermuda is also a delightful island all by itself. The weather is warm, the people are nice, the villages are colorful. It's not just a great stop on the NARC, but a great place to visit all by itself. First stop is Ordnance Island to clear customs and immigrations. For those boats in the NARC rally, the $35 per person entry fee is waived. Once the paperwork is done, you have the option of where to park the boat. Anchoring out, as we said, is free, and there's plenty of room. Bermuda Yacht Services has a large welcome center on Ordnance Island with Wi-Fi, a lounge, lending library, and a helpful staff on hand. BSA also manages the dock spaces in St. George's at the commercial docks, but there's also stern-to docking on Ordnance Island, or you can elect to raft up with other yachts inside Ordnance Island right in the middle of town. Now, don't expect Florida dockside amenities, for this is just Bermuda. Many of the rally boats will tie up at the St. George's Dinghy and Sports Club at the east end of the harbor. There's a coin laundry, free Wi-Fi, water and ice, a bar with pool tables, and lots of swapping of stories at the end of the voyage. The NARC holds a social hour at the Dinghy Club with a banquet when the rally arrives. Then it's time to fix gear, repair torn sails, do some sightseeing, shopping and provisioning. There are pubs in the village along with restaurants, shops and bookstores. The tourist office is right on the dock and can help with transportation and places to see. There are a few banks in St. George's for cash withdrawals, but the ATM dispense Bermuda currency, so if you want US dollars, you have to see a teller. Bermuda is a large island, more than 20 miles long. St. George's is at the north end, with the city of Hamilton right in the middle of the island. There's a bus and ferry service between the two and many of the other villages and settlements on the island. The few days that the rally spends in harbor is not nearly enough time to really explore Bermuda. That would take a week or two, and a summer voyage to the Onion Patch is a cruise all by itself. After a few days of R&R and a new weather forecast, we cleared out of Bermuda Customs, moved the boat over to Darling's, the fuel dock in the middle of St. George's, took on diesel and water, then prepared the yacht for sea. We headed out through Town Cut, back into the Atlantic, raised the sails, turned right, and headed for the Caribbean. This voyage south of Bermuda to the Caribbean is the best of all. The weather is warm and sunny, the foul weather gear is off and put away, and it's shorts and t-shirts the rest of the trip. The fishing is generally pretty good, with mahi-mahi the most abundant. Now there's time to read, work on the tan, write up your personal logbook, and swap stories with the crew. The winds are usually northeast when leaving St. George's, but then 100 miles south of Bermuda, you'll run into a high-pressure cell that'll steal the wind, so we motor for a day. The winds come back out of the east a few hundred miles north of the Caribbean islands, first blowing 10 to 12 knots, then increasing to 15 to 20 to 25 knots as we enter the trade winds, around 23 to 24 degrees north. From here on, it's fast sailing with the winds on the beam at port quarter all the way into the islands. We dodged squalls and rain showers, but the sailing was steady on a port tack with the winds slightly south of east for the rest of the way. Sunsets and sunrises are dramatic, and at night, the sky is full of stars. 60 miles north of our waypoint, just north of the British Virgin Islands, we eased the main and jib, steered south by southwest into the islands, the wind and the seas now on our port quarter. Arriving in the islands is always a thrill, even for those of us that have made it many times before. The 2,000-foot peaks with their halo of clouds emerge out of the haze, announcing that we've made it safely. There'll be customs and immigrations to deal with, phone calls to make telling those at home that we made it safely. The boat will need a good cleaning, and so will we. Well, we've run out of food, and there's no ice, and I could stand with a rum and tonic. For a week, we've not had to take out our wallet, deal with the political situation back home, or with traffic, or with lines at the stores, or even the family. We've been out in the wilderness, far from civilization, in our own little world, with just the crew, the dolphins, and the sea. But we're here now, in the tropics, where the wind blows out of the east between 10 to 20 knots, the water is clear and warm, and the islands are green and inviting. If you've been dreaming about sailing your own boat south to the Caribbean this winter, and are interested in joining the NARC rally, click on the link on this page, or give us a call. If you're a boat owner or a pro skipper looking for crew, send us your request by email, and we'll post it to our membership. This service is free. If you want to crew on a yacht heading south in the fall or north next spring, there are two options. If you've not been offshore on an extended voyage before, look at our SWAN program. There's a video and information on this website. But if you're an experienced sailor looking to crew on yacht deliveries around the world, we urge you to join Offshore Passage Opportunities. We send out crew requests weekly, if not daily, and there's a video and information on this website. Whether joining a crew for a race in the Southern Circuit, joining a rally, or an offshore voyage, or yacht deliveries throughout the world, or just around the bay at home, Offshore Passage Opportunities has been putting owners and skippers together with crews for more than 20 years. Call us at 1-800-4PASSAGE or email us at the address on the screen.